Hello. So it is clear from the biblical text that we see in Genesis 3 that man's death is a result of the fall. Man eats and sins, falls into transgression, and dies as a result of sin. However, if you read the account in Genesis 3, you find no indication that animal death was a result of the fall. Go read through the account carefully. Not once does it say the whole of creation fell at this point and animal deaths result, which I find to be a rather strange view. However, there are many Christians out there that believe that animal death is the result of the fallen man, and I thought I'd make a video responding to this claim and see if what does the evidence or the scriptural evidence support. So, a video by Sebastian Lopez here, where he goes through and makes some arguments as to why um, death is the result of the fall and man's sin, and I'm going to respond to his video. So let's go.
Everyone, this is Sebastian. The natural world shows death, predators prey. The predator.
Yeah, so first, his first premise, we would have to say that predators and predatory features in nature have to be the result of design. If we look at say the design of the eye of an eagle, it's designed to see a mouse moving in the grass a mile, 2 miles away. This would have to be a result of design. Same with a scorpion. A scorpion is designed with the intention of having a stinger, body plate armor, talons, claws, pinchers. These are all predatory features and are a result of design by nature.
And they try to refute this statement by citing Aquinas, their god, of course, because they are Aquinas idolaters.
Yes, so I understand this video is more of an attack on Catholics and their perspective and views, and I am not Catholic, so I'm not coming at this from a Catholic perspective. I'm coming at more from what does the scripture itself entail and say. And so there have been many other Christians throughout history who've held such views would be people like St. Basil of Caesarea, for example. So this interpretation goes way back. In fact, when we go to the time of Second Temple Judaism, almost everybody, Philo, Josephus, Jubilees, all did not hold to this concept that animal death was the result of the fall. This appears to be more of a Christian Hellenistic idea, and most likely comes from Greek culture or following Greek mythological stories. See, in Greek mythology, they had the story of Pandora. So in Hebrew history, the first woman was Eve, but in Greek mythology, the first woman was Pandora. And in this legend of Pandora, she is given a box in order to protect. And if in this box, death, disease, suffering were all trapped within it. And when Pandora opens the box, that is when death enters the world. And most likely, this belief of death being a result of human sin is most likely a Greek culture imposing Greek mythological ideas on the biblical text. But I think we don't find it when we read the text naturally itself.
Now, here we see two things. First, that meat eating did not exist prior to the fall. Even the birds of the air and everything that crept in the earth, they ate green herbs for food. They did not eat meat. And the second thing that we see here is that God did not create death. Right? Everything that He made was good. And
Second. So first of all, the passage does not say that meat eating didn't occur. Genesis 29 and 30 is just giving plants for the purposes of food. And when we look at the prior verses within this narrative, we get a bit of a bigger picture. So in verses 26, 27, man is made in the image of God. Verse 28, man is given dominion over the animals. And then verse 29, the animals are given dominion over the plants. So if we look at this order, the author of Genesis is not attempting to simply say meat eating didn't occur. And because if we look at the passage, we don't see any indication where it says that meat eating doesn't occur. Instead, we're seeing that plants are being given to animals for the purposes of food. And then in verse 28, 8, we see that animals are given for the purposes of man. Now, when we look at the Hebrew words used in Genesis 1:28, the for subdue and rule, the Hebrew words are kavesh and radah. So kavesh is used 13 other times within the Old Testament. 6 times it's used for war conquest, 5 times it's used for enslavement, 1 time it's used for trampling, and the last instance it's used in Ezra for sexual assault. So actually these words subdue have a very negative context throughout the Bible. And through all instances that they're used with the suggestion of force involved in them. This suggests that the creation does not desire to be ruled by man, and this rule is undesirable. Same with the Hebrew word radah. It's used 27 times throughout the Bible, and in all these circumstances, it's used in a forceful situation, not freely desired upon. A quote here from Joshua Van E, quoting on radah: the verb by itself can be used to communicate harshness or injustice. The focus is on having power over someone and not executing administrative or bureaucratic function. It is not used for someone ruling over his own people unless that rule involves some form of oppression or injustice. So this suggests by the Hebrew words they used in verse 28 that Adam's rule over the creation was undesirable by the creation of itself, and suggests that the creation is not perfect in its original form. It also suggests maybe meeting is part of this rule, and after all, how is Adam supposed to rule over a fish? Which would make sense if you consider that Abel, Adam's son, was a pastoralist. He brought his fatty portions as sacrifice to the Lord, and they were accepted. So clearly Abel must have been eating meat himself. And though this raises a possible objection, in Genesis 9 verses 3 through 4, many believe that the eating of meat was only something that occurred after the flood. However, when we look at it in depth, we realize that Genesis 9 verses 3 to 4 is using a classic Hebraic formula that we see throughout the scripture by restating pre-existing commands. So for example, in Deuteronomy 14 verses 6 to 7, it says, of all the creatures living in the water you may eat any that has fins and scales. However, but anything that does not have fins or scales not. So it pre-states existing dietary commands and then adds additional commands onto that. And this is what is going on in Genesis 9. So the Hebrew of the text is actually assuming that meat eating was already in place. And this would have had to, command had to begin at the beginning of creation. In Genesis 1 verse 28. So Genesis 1 verses 28 is permitting man to use animals to subdue them, to rule over them for his purposes and means. So it is permitting man to use animals for meat as well as use plants for food. So Genesis 1:28 I think contradicts his interpretation. I do not want to downplay the harshness of these two verses, Kavesh and Radah. Now when you go to a skeptic and confront them about these verses and challenges, they usually try to look to, first they'll say Kavesh is not wide enough, even though it's used 13 times throughout scripture. But they will look to 1 Kings in Radah, 1 Kings 4 verse 24, to say that Radah is used to describe the rule of Solomon. And since the rule of Solomon is considered generally peaceful, then that should be indication that Radah doesn't necessarily have a negative context. However, in the reign of Solomon is actually proves our case if you look at it, because it's Solomon ruling over his enemies and different kings of different lands that are enemies to Solomon. So yes, the Hebrew word radah can be used in times of peace, but it does not suggest the relationship between the ruler and the ruled is a willing relationship. Rather, it appears to be an enforced relationship that is imposed upon. So hence, the creation does not choose to be ruled by man. Rather, it is enforced upon and is enforced rulership under or by man. If the author wanted to suggest a more positive rulership, that the creation enjoyed being ruled under Adam, the Hebrew words they should have used was memshalah, like how the sun rules the day and the night. This is a more positive or neutral word of ruling. So Genesis 29 verses 30 technically does not say meat eating does occur or doesn't occur. And verse 28 strongly speaks to the case that this is some sort of rulership going on that could involve meat eating, as it permits man to use animals as a means, and using animals for food would be one of such means. But his other objection would be Genesis 1 verses 30. Why does God call the creation very good? Well, I'm going to save the answer to that for part 2, and I'm going to make a part 3 looking at the New Testament verses he cited. So until then, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a good day.